coup, which I call the kidnapping, happened last February 28, 29.
The idea that someone was abducted is just totally inconsistent with everything I heard or saw or am aware of.
He was not kidnapped. We did not force him onto the airplane. He went onto the airplane willingly, and that's the truth.
Conspiracy theories like that do nothing to help the Haitian people realize the future that they aspire to, which is a better future, a more free future, and a more prosperous future. We took steps to protect Mr. Aristide. We took steps to protect his family as they departed Haiti. It was Mr. Aristide's decision to resign, and he spelled out his reasons why.
At the house at 5 a.m. when I saw some U.S. personnel from the embassy, of which I recognize Mr. Moreno. I came in to tell the president that they were going to organize a press conference at the embassy, and for him to be ready to accompany them. And the president called Mildred, and we boarded the vehicles to go to the embassy. And as we were heading towards the embassy, you know, passing by the airport, we ended up making a right inside the airport. And that's when I realized that we were not going to the embassy. So.
And the president also didn't know that he also thought he was going to a press conference at the embassy?
That's what Mr. Moreno had invited him to do. And as we were at the end of the runway threshold, we saw a plane pull in and just parked there, and then we saw some military personnel.
What was the press conference supposed to be about?
The press conference was probably going to be about his leaving of power.
Whether he would leave power?
Whether he would leave power, yes.
So what happened when you saw the plane? What happened next?
Well, I saw a deployment of U.S. Marines everywhere. And that's when I realized that, you know, it was something serious. I saw a white plane with a U.S. flag at the tail of the aircraft, and it looked strange because there was no markings on it. And as the plane stopped, you know, they had us board, everybody boarded the plane. And all the Steel Foundation agents that were on contract with the government to give the president security, boarded the plane also.
Are you with Steel Foundation?
I'm not with Steel. I'm with President Aristide. And we all boarded the plane. And they sat us down. They didn't tell us where we were going. And then I closed the door. They didn't even want us to pull the shades up or nothing. We just sat there and we waited. They sat us down, and then they closed the gate of the plane, and then we took off.
Did you know where you were going?
No, we never knew where we were going.
For how long?
When we landed in Antigua, that's what they told us. We landed in Antigua, and in Antigua they told us that there's a possibility that we might be going to South Africa. But he was talking, I mean, the person that was relating the information was relating it to one of the Steel Foundation agent. And I overheard it when he said it. As we were sitting down, they started taking our names down, and they asked the Steel Foundation people, where they were going. The guys that were part of the crew of the airplane.
They didn't identify themselves. They were military.
Well, they boarded the plane dressed in military. But as soon as they boarded the plane, they changed clothes, civilian. They were, they had baseball hats and regular civilian clothes. So they no longer appeared as military.
And they were who? These people who changed their clothes?
Well, they boarded the plane. They were dressed in full military gears.
U.S. military.
U.S. military.
And so you left Antigua overhearing that you might be going to South Africa, but not knowing.
Yes. I left Antigua thinking that we might be going to South Africa because that's what they said. As we were on the plane, we landed in an island called Assumption. And that's when they told us that South Africa would not accept us, and that they didn't know where we were going because they didn't have a country that would accept us at this time. So therefore,
had the president applied to these countries?
The president didn't even know where he was going. I would say that it is a kidnapping.
You have talked about the U.S. presence at the airport and taking him to the airport. What were the other evidences of the U.S. involvement? What was the other evidence of U.S. involvement?
Well, a plane that shows up at 5:45 in the morning, out of nowhere, the tower's not even open. There's a big flag in the middle of the vertical fin. Big U.S. flag in the middle of the vertical fin, big plane. You know, come in at 5:45 in the morning shows that, you know, there's some kind of involvement.
How many U.S. military left with him in the plane?
20.
And how many security from steel company?
About 18.
And were they all U.S.?
Yes.
So that was 38 U.S. security and military.
And some steel guys had their wives with them. And a baby that was probably a year old.
So they had to figure this out very fast. They wanted to get to the airport and get their families to the airport. How did they get their families to the airport?
Well, it happened very fast because somehow between the U.S. Embassy and some of the steel guys, there was some communication.
So they knew before the president that the president was being taken to the airport?
Yes. That's the only thing I can...
And what happened to everyone? Did they all come here?
They all came here and left. They never disembarked the plane.
When the coup, which I call a kidnapping, happened last February 28, 29, this opportunity gives me a good chance to say thank you to the chairman of CARICOM, Prime Minister Patterson, to the heads, to all our brothers and sisters of the Caribbean family.
And why do you call it a coup, a kidnapping?
Because they broke the constitutional order by using force to have me out of the country the way it happened.
How did it happen?
I will not go to details, maybe next time, but as I said, they use force. When you have militaries coming from abroad, surrounding your house, taking control of the airport, surrounding the National Palace, being in the streets, and take you from your house to put you in a plane where you have to spend 20 hours without knowing where they were going to go with you, without talking about details, which I already did somehow in other occasions. It was using force to take an elected president out of his country.
And was that U.S. military force that took you out?
There were U.S. military, and I suspect it could be also completed with the presence of other militaries from other countries.
When they came to your house in the early morning of February 29th, was it U.S. military that came?
There were diplomats, there were U.S. military, there were U.S. people.
And what did they tell you?
Well, as I said, I prefer to not go to details right now because I already talked about it in details on other occasions. And it's also one good opportunity for me to help the people focusing on the results of that kidnapping, because actually they still continue to kill Haitians in Haiti, and Haitians continue to flee Haiti by boat people. Others have to go to hiding. Others courageously went to the streets to demonstrate in a peaceful way, asking for my return. And when we know what happened to those they killed, we have concerns about what may happen to those who peacefully demonstrate for my return.
The Bush administration said that after you got on the plane, when you were leaving, you spoke with CARICOM leaders. Is this true?
They lied. I never had any opportunity from February 28th at night when they started to the minute I arrived in car. I never had any conversation with anyone from CARICOM within that framework of time.
There has already been a letter filed in the U.S. with the Attorney General demanding an investigation into the kidnapping. There has been a letter filed with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights requesting an immediate mission to Haiti in order to investigate the kidnapping and to investigate the other human rights violations in Haiti, which include people who have already been convicted of massive human rights violations who now are exercising power and doing the same violations they did the last time they were in power. There is also in the U.S., there are preparations for a kidnapping case against the American authorities. Ici, aujourd'hui, je représente Maître Gilbert Collard, c'est un avocat français et qu'il m'a demandé de vous expliquer que lui, il prépare des poursuites légales pour l'enlèvement contre des autorités françaises, y compris 2 ambassadeurs français, Yves Godel et Thierry Bercard, aussi contre Régis Debray et Véronique de Velpin.
Threats, what kind of
the letter that was signed by the president was signed under the explicit was signed under the duress of violence and under the threats of more violence, including violence that had already happened, the killing of many police officers, the killing of many government supporters, and the threats of continued killing of government supporters, of the president himself, and of his family.
Was President Aristide physically threatened at that time?
Yes, he was.
How?
In the sense that the ambassadors of France and the U.S. told him that he would be killed, his family would be killed, and his supporters would be killed if he did not leave right away. Ils ont dit explicitement, tous les deux, les ambassadeurs américains et français, qu'ils ne feront rien pour empêcher le bain de sang, qu'ils ne feront rien pour supporter la démocratie. Et la seule chose qu'ils étaient prêts à faire, c'était d'aider le président à sortir du pays s'il signe le document. Et la question du témoin est intéressante parce qu'il y avait, je pense que c'est 19, je pense qu'il y avait 19 membres de Steele Foundation, de la sécurité privée du président, et eux aussi, ils étaient obligés de monter sur l'avion pour aller à la République centrafricaine et puis pour retourner. Et l'objectif clair de ça, c'est de les empêcher de parler immédiatement de ce qui s'est passé. And also we have to, one thing I need to add to what Kim said about U.S. support for this coup. 15 months ago, the U.S. gave 20,000 M16 rifles to the Dominican military, and that's a military that does not have any internal or external enemies. It was already armed to the teeth, and they gave them 20,000 M16s. The U.S. military officials have since, in the last week, they have admitted that many of those guns have, in fact, gotten into the hands of the rebels.
Au nom de cette paix, nous faisons appel à une résistance pacifique. Quelques heures avant l'enlèvement, je suis le président élu démocratiquement et je le demeure. Et c'est au nom de ceux-là et de celle-là qui m'avaient élu, qui aiment la paix. The coup, which I call the kidnapping, happened last February 28, 29.